Sweet. So, Caitlin, thank you for taking the time to sit down and be with me on the podcast. I know we've been going back and forth a little bit just with our schedules and obviously the holidays coming up. So, I am super, super appreciative that you could take the time and just talk with me.
I'm super excited to be here, Nate. Thank you so much for having me on the pod. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, not a problem. So we're going to jump right in. We'll quick start it. Obviously, you're an enlisted member in the Air Force. Let's just talk about where you're from, why you joined, where you're at now, and what you do.
Absolutely. So I am a master sergeant now. I joined in April of 2006. I'm from a really small town in North Texas. I used to joke that the only thing we had in town was a Sonic and a blinking yellow light. That's the type of town I'm from. So it did not lose anything there. So I just decided one day I was bored and thought the Air Force sounded like a good idea on a Tuesday. And then I just didn't know how to get out of it after the ball started rolling. So I joined in 2006 as a radio and TV broadcaster. Now I'm a public affairs specialist at Air Education and Training Command at JBSA Randolph here in South Texas. So it's just, I guess, kind of me in a nutshell. I don't think I missed anything. I hope not.
No, that's great. I love it. So, before I came in, I was a radio broadcaster and had dreamed and hoped that that would be it, but those stars did not align, and here I am in material management.
I mean, I gotta give it up to my recruiter because, and I mean, how many people do you have say that? Like, I had the best recruiter in the Air Force, but because I had no designs on broadcasting at all.
Okay.
And I walked into my recruiter's office and he sent me to MEPS and I came back and he was like, "So, what jobs did you pick?" And I was like, "I picked EOD, air traffic control, and security forces." And he was like, maybe we should look at that a little bit. So, um, he had a radio and TV broadcast job come across his desk and he said, "Hey, I've never put anybody in for this before. Do you want to give it a shot?" And I said, "Well, sure. I guess that sounds like fun." And then, 6 months later, I was sitting at Fort Meade and they were teaching me how to
Yeah.
talk right. And I was like, wait a second. And for me, I was a total wallflower. I was not a popular kid in school. So coming having to come out of my comfort zone in tech school and then subsequently in my career was really difficult. But I mean, I think that's what the Air Force kind of does is it gives you a whole new identity and it can change your whole life and it definitely did that for me.
Was that a difficult transition to go from a more reserved person and now you're into not only a brand new career, but a career that forces you to engage and talk to people?
It was incredibly difficult. I mean, at the time, I was an 18-year-old kid, like I said, from Nowheresville, Texas. I had never done anything or gone anywhere. So, I mean, it was completely outside my comfort zone. And I remember like calling back to my dad in Texas and just in tears and saying, I don't think I can do this. Like, I'm scared, I'm nervous.
Yeah.
And he would always say, "What are you so scared of? They can't eat you." And I was like, what does that even mean? But that kind of became like my mantra. Like I can't get eaten, so I might as well just keep charging forward. And then when it came time to put down, your bases you want to go to, I put down Lodge's Field in the
Okay.
Azores as my first choice. Because my brother was in the Air Force and he was like, "Oh, you should put down this base. It's gorgeous." And I got it. And I ended up there for 15 months. And I called him about like 2 weeks in and I was like, "Hey, how long were you stationed here?" And he goes, "I wasn't stationed there. We stopped there for 3 hours on the way back from Iraq." And I was like, okay. So then
Yeah.
again, a whole new experience completely out of my comfort zone. So, you know, uh, people have asked me in regards to the post, like, you're talking about some uncomfortable topics, and I'm just like, brother, I've been uncomfortable my entire career. This ain't nothing new.
Absolutely. I was talking to a guy yesterday, a friend of mine, and he was saying, as it comes in in his career too, he was saying the moment he realized he had nothing left to lose is when he became alive. Is that kind of what happened with you? Are you just at a point to where you're like, I have to just say something?
Yeah, I think it was a really a combination of a lot of things. I mean, one, I just think as senior NCOs, we're all so tired. Um, we've we've come up in the age of, force distribution and promote nows and
Yeah.
strats, so we've been charging hard since we were early staff sergeants, so I think we're all so tired. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing was, the pandemic kind of gave us all a different perspective on what's important. And for me, especially, I got pregnant right in the middle or
Mm.
right in the beginning of the pandemic. I found out I was pregnant in January of 2020. And then we all went into lockdown. And then my daughter was born October 7th. And that same day, we found out my dad was dying of terminal lung cancer.
Mm.
And things happened very quickly after that. I was lucky enough to get a humanitarian here to Randolph, and I was able to stay with him from the beginning of November last year until he passed in January. And it it fundamentally changes you to lose a parent.
Yeah.
I believe that, there's a definite delineation in the before and the after. And afterwards, I suddenly realized that I had spent my entire career having these great adventures, and I talked to my dad every work day of my Air Force career. I would call him on my way home from work. That was my routine. And, so it was really difficult for me because here I was, I had had all these grand adventures, but I hadn't really spent time at home with him. And so my priorities shifted.
Yeah.
And then following that, I had a mentor look at my EPR for the year and go, "Is this all you did?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know how to capture I grew a human and took care of my dying father." Like, how,
Yeah.
that's not a bullet. And so it was I was like, wow, we really don't have any compassion left for our senior NCOs to be human. There's no room in the Air Force promotion system for senior NCOs to have a little bit of humanity. And so finally, then I was having a conversation with a chief, and I didn't feel like I was articulating myself very well. And I came back to my desk and I kind of hammered out the post on my
Mm.
phone and didn't think a thing of it. And somebody asked me to make it public. And then, my God.
Yeah. Well, before we get into the aftermath, let's go through the post.
Okay.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I would love for you to read it just because I've read this thing minimum 10 times. I had my mom read it, my wife's read it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and as I told you before we had started recording, multiple friends because I'm a master sergeant too, and
Hmm.
most of my friends are a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 year master sergeants or seniors because that's just where I'm at in my career as well. And every single one of them was just like, wow,
Yeah.
like that's how we feel. And so I'm not going to say anything more. I want you to read it because you did it so well, and then we'll break it down a little bit.
Okay. So here's how the post went.
Yeah.
Weaponized success is real and it's in your senior NCO and NCO ranks. What do I mean by weaponized success? A few things. Firstly, and most dangerously, taking your top performers and constantly expecting more from them, wringing out every single last drop of motivation and dedication from them before you toss them aside with a remark like, "You really had a dip in performance this year." We should all get an off year, or two, or three. But weaponized success from the mouths of our mentors tells us that taking time for our mental health or our families and hell just to breathe is detrimental to our careers. Next, the phrase, "don't let your foot off the gas." You have to. You have to. If we're going to use car references to illustrate successful people, I'm really not here for it, but fine. When I used to open road race with my brother, we drove a 40-mile stretch of Texas highway in the 130 class. Our tech speed, or the max speed we could go, was 167. Open road racing is a time trial. How fast could you go 40 miles if you drove a consistent 130.0 miles per hour the entire time? 1828. Okay, now we have the goal. But the road isn't a straight line with perfect pavement. The road is a West Texas shithole and winds through the outskirts of Big Bend. Sometimes you're cruising those curves at 75, 80 miles per hour. Sometimes you know a big dip is coming up, and if you don't want that Camaro airborne, you better take your foot off the gas. Oh, you'll make up the speed. There's freshly paved asphalt in a straight line for 4 miles, and you can crank that V8 up to your tech speed and make up the time. Those are your deployments. Those times when you can give 100% of yourself to the Air Force. Those shops where it's good airmen and even better leaders, and baby,
Mhm.
we're rocking at 167 miles per hour. But it's not sustainable. You'll blow an engine, you gotta slow down for the next turn. 100 million different reasons that sometimes you just have to slow down so you can finish the race. And finally, thinking that every NCO, senior NCO, should or does want to be a chief. I've said it once and I'll say it again until they pull the crusty boots off my hobbit feet. I just want to be a master sergeant and take care of airmen. There isn't one job you can task me with that I wouldn't do if it meant taking care of my airmen. Weaponized Success is telling senior NCOs that they have to work themselves into a frothing frenzy to make the next rank. Step on that master sergeant you work with. Don't you want to get shotted? Take time away from your family, from yourself, in order to lead the top three, or you won't win that award. Nah, fam, I'm trying to watch my babies grow up because it's already going too fast. And when I retire in 5 years, I want to still be married when I do it. Stop letting weaponized success be the status quo. You're breaking your senior NCOs and you're poisoning the next generation who are NCOs right now and faced with their own Hunger Games. Take care of yourselves, y'all. Love your people, and whatever your tech speed is today in your race, you're right on time.
Ah, so well done, first of all.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think there's a few things that just jump at me, and like we've talked about, just in feedbacks, as you've said, um, you do so well in your career, and then you get that one feedback where they find this one blip where they didn't even know who you were, and you're like, well, did you not see all this other stuff sandwiched in between? Because what we're constantly told within that 5 year rating period, oh, don't worry about the one, don't worry about a blip, you'll be fine as long as you show overall sustained performance. But it goes back to, it just takes one person with one opinion to think that that blip is your sustained performance.
Exactly. And we always tell these senior NCOs like you got to give 100%. Well, is it really 100% if it's the constant? Like are we it's and the sustained success is infuriating to me, because I came like you can only do so much. There are only so many awards that you can win, and I remember being in NCOA and I was not trying to do anything in NCOA but cooperate to graduate. And um, I won the Levito. And I remember thinking, I had two thoughts in that moment. One was, I am incredibly hungover and I hope that I don't pass out walking up on this stage. And my very second thought was, oh shit, how am I going to top this? Like, what am I going to do
Y-
next year on my EPR? I literally could not
Yeah.
enjoy winning that award because I was so worried about what it meant for that sustained performance.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine about NCOA because you go in there, and I compare it to Survivor, the TV show, because if we're honest, and I'm gonna be, you walk in there because you know that that award, the Levito, which is the top, and then any DG, because if you can get DG, you're fine, right? Levito's shoot for the moon, land upon the stars type of thing. But if you can walk out DG, whatever you did, a little if you're clean the rest of the year, if you throw on your EPR that you're an award winner at NCOA, your record's at the top.
Yeah,
But it's like you said, once you achieve that award, what next am I going to do?
exactly. What am I going to do for the encore? And I'm so sick of feeling like that. I'm so sick of it being more is better. There's and when I wrote the post, I wrote, everybody should have an off year. And I had some feedback of, well, you don't get a year off. This is the military. And I'm like, no, 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 no. You guys are
Yeah.
misunderstanding what I'm saying. I'm not saying that we just get to take a year off and not do anything. I'm saying that, like, life happens, and even if life didn't happen, we should be able to kind of throttle back or not have to worry, like, oh, I won the Levito and now what am I going to do for this year so that I don't completely screw my record over for promotion. um and it's just it's really unfortunate that that's how our successful senior NCOs have to think in order to stay successful.
Yeah, and that's hard, and it's hard because, as you mentioned, right, the don't let your foot off the gas. And that in every feedback that's normally directed at the in between eligible years of your performance report. So the way that I've always taken it is, well, I have to at least show that I'm leading the same amount of people or a group of people not within my squadron or flight, so I can show that I know how to lead people that don't have the same job as me. And then to still trying to show either some sort of education or, again, another type of leading thing in a community or an upper echelon of the base or the wing or whatever it is that I think that I should be doing next. But at the
Yeah,
same time, like, next time.
it feels like saying don't let your foot off the gas is like another way of saying I'm going to need you to do everything but your job, right? And that's, I think, what annoys me about it, is because nowhere in there, and you laid down the magic formula for success, right? You lead a team, you lead it outside your work center, you make sure you get your education on lock, you win an award, you make sure that your people are winning awards. Nowhere in there is it captured, are you mentoring airmen, are you training airmen, are you actually physically leading airmen, are you visible to your airmen? Nowhere in there is preparing the airmen of 2030, right? And so I
Yeah.
think that's what's irritating to me, is somebody along the way decided, here's how you be a chief, here's how you make chief, and we've all just kind of accepted that this is the formula, and we've never pushed back on, one, is it promoting the best leaders, and two, why is there only one way to the top? I had a command chief when I was a super, super young airman who used to point to his, like, massive chief stripe rack, and he'd be like, this is just 20 years of undetected crimes. And you don't meet chiefs like that anymore. Like, used to, you had
Yeah.
to have an Article 15 to be a decent chief, you know? But
Right. Yeah.
now we have,
You
we,
can't.
you can't. And I'm not saying all chiefs are bad, and I'll just caveat that too, because I've heard that feedback, like, well, you just hate chiefs. I don't. Um, I I some of my best friends are chiefs. So I just believe that because we want the best leaders to develop the best airmen of tomorrow to win in the strategic fight, then there needs to be more than one formula to make it to the top.
I totally agree. And I want to add too, like, yes, are we venting right now about a system that we want to be better? Of course. But but it's why? Because we see something that's broken that we know does not have to be this way. And a lot of it is, if we're allowed to be decent humans, it can be fixed. However, we, all of us have allowed for this system to stay in place because, let's be real, I know I have, I'm sure you have as well. I've been caught in the middle of the game too, to where it's like, well, I could go walk to the senior master sergeant's office and let him know how I feel about my airmen, or I could just, sorry pal, it's just not looking your way this time, we'll just try next time, or whatever the thing that they wanted or didn't need, or whatever it was. You find yourself in moments where it's easier to check yourself instead of going that extra mile for them, even though you know that you should. But there's times that you also know, well, I'm eligible for promotion next year, or this person's going to be my supervisor for the next 2 years. And so you hold it, and it's a terrible feeling.
Yeah, there's a go along to get along kind of sense sometimes,
Yeah.
and there's a I don't want to rock the boat. And I think uh, when I say the only goal I ever had for my career was one, not to get fired, um, and two, I just wanted to be a master sergeant. And that didn't even really start until I was led by amazing master sergeants. And then I thought,
Right.
man, that would be so cool. Like, I hope I get to be in that position someday to influence a young airman. And so when I say all I ever wanted to do was be a master sergeant, I mean that with my whole heart. So yeah, I don't care anymore. So I think that's what kind of led to the post was like, what are y'all gonna do? Like, okay. And I've heard from a mentor or two, like, well, now you've told the whole career field that you don't want to get promoted. I'm like, okay, cool. But I've also told the whole Air Force that we have a problem, and a lot of people have agreed with me. And that's I was telling one of my mentors, who's an amazing chief, who's working with enlisted force development with Chief Bass's office, um, Chief Blazer, and I was telling him the other day, I was like, the best part about this is we know that there's a problem now. We're speaking about it in open forums, and we have the numbers. It's not like onesie two. It's not like me and you are
Yeah.
the only ones saying this, Nate. Like, everybody is saying it now. And so now that we have the numbers, we can work to change the culture.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like we said, so um, you know, the hot rummers that are on the table now are, the EPR is going to narrative, and that's fine. I bullets narrative, I don't care either way, the way it's written. We'll figure that part out. But I hope that with that change, there's changes within that form or the presentation of how we're capturing what we're doing as people. Because like you said, how how am I showing that I'm actually impacting another person's life? You know, because like you said, let's be real. We all see it. We all see the good leaders that take the extra time, and the airmen come to them not only for work stuff but after work stuff. You know, and then you see the ones that just brush these people aside for nothing just because they're not the person that'll push them up to the next thing.
Yeah, there's definitely a sense of like there are golden children, and there are doers, and it's just I and people have told me, well, it's like that in the civilian world too. I don't know. The last job I had in the civilian world was at the Buckle in the mall when I was 15 years old. So I cannot speak for what the civilian world does, but I tell you, in a career like the Air Force or the military, where human beings are the most important weapon system we have, nothing goes without the people. And having empowered NCOs and empowered senior NCOs is the asymmetric advantage of the Air Force. That is what sets us apart from our adversaries, is that we empower our NCOs and senior NCOs to get the job done. And if we're not taking care of them, and as senior NCOs, if we're not taking care of each other, then the whole system starts to break down after a while. And I think that we're starting to see some of those cracks when you talk about, mental health crisis, when you talk
Mm.
about the just the mass exodus of senior NCOs, good leaders that we lose um, every single day because they just can't put up with the politics anymore. So um, that's why I think that with the numbers and with us talking about it openly like this, then we can change it, and we can work to get to a better place with each other.
Absolutely. Um, there's another thing too, and I'm going to spin this into a positive because you wrote it in your post as well. But first, we should be allowed to have these conversations because it's important, because it's how change happens. But you mentioned, um, I'm going to reread this again because this part's important, and I think that this is what a lot of us want and have done in our careers, in our sections currently. And you wrote, "Oh, we'll make up the speed. There's freshly paved asphalt in a straight line for 4 miles, and you can crank it up to V8 and go the top speed for that time. Deployments, and I'm going to add two real world taskers.
Mhm.
And when the airmen know the job matters, the buy-in is there because we all join for whatever reason. But at the end of the day, you know that if it actually matters in your section, everyone will work 12s. Someone will go home to come back that night on mids, and there won't be any grumbling when they know it matters.
100%. And I'll just point to the most recent real world example I can think of, and that's one of our bases here at AETC. Holloman was hosting the Operation Allies Welcome, so
Mm,
Operation Allies Refuge before that, where as we were evacuating people from Afghanistan, we needed a place to house them. And Holloman just created like an entire village out of nothing. And when you talk about
yeah.
the amount of logistics, the manpower, the resources, everything that had to go into making that happen in an instant. And we made it happen because the airmen could see the real world effects. They they're literally welcoming, refugees off the plane, and they can see the real world effect that the mission is having. So yeah, I'm not saying that we don't need to do the day-to-day minutia of our jobs, but I do think that there's an element that you see in real world missions, in deployments, that if I could put it in a bottle and sell it at a wing shop, I would in a heartbeat, man.
Mhm.
So
It,
hopefully we can figure out how to kind of infuse that, and I do think it starts with us as senior NCOs. We talk about, you know this whole like China Russia strategic competition, all of these buzzwords that you've been hearing about the past like year or so. It doesn't ring down to the airman level. They're not
mhm.
thinking strategically yet. So how do we educate them on that? How do we help them learn about our adversaries and where they play into the deterrence and the defense of our nation? You got to give them purpose. This is that new generation, and I'm going to sound like a crusty senior NCO. They want to know why, and it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing
No.
to ask why. But my God, if I had asked why when I was an A1C to my master sergeant, I don't know that I'd be standing here today, Nate. but but I love the fact that they're asking why, because we need more of that.
Yeah, no, I think I mean, one, it creates good ideas because, these kids are smarter than I was when I came in.
A hundred
Like,
percent.
they have all this information at their fingertips, and it's like, I didn't know we could do it that way. Let's do it your way. Um, but it is that empowerment, and it is nice because, like you said, when you get in a section where it's buzzing and you got a little bit of top cover, like you said, you can roll for a good 6 months, a year, and that thing is humming along.
And yeah, and just to speak to like the morale of a shop when it's like that, or the lack of stress that you have in your life when it's like that. I I long for the day that I get to come home and not feel like I just ran a marathon for the day. And I think that's what it feels like when you're in a good shop. Like, you can just come home at the end of the day, know that you did a good job, and like you're ready to go back to it tomorrow. Um and yeah, I love that we have those airmen that are thinking outside the box, and they're asking those questions why. And General Brown has told us to ask those questions why. Like, just go for it. Like, the whole addressing bureaucracy thing, that's what it's all
Mhm.
about. Like, why do we do the things that we do? Why is there only one formula to make chief? Why? So yeah, let's break the whole mold. Why not? Like, I'm not doing anything.
No, I'm with you on that one. Like the accelerate, change, or lose. Like, you know, for me, that's not just his talking point. Like we need to, and we need to. Like, and if we're gonna evaluate ourselves, let's just change it. We don't have to just do stuff because we've been doing stuff. We can change it. Change it. Let's
Yeah.
find it.
Yeah, let's find the solution. I love that, you get into a shop and you're like, "Well, why is this the way? Oh, it's just always been that way." Or like at my shop right now, I will open up a drawer and there is just so much junk in it from like 18 years ago. And I'm like, why is this still here? Like, why aren't we? I worked in, when I was in Osan, you know, our commander there, um, was just, he was intense. And I think you have to be a commander at Osan, like ready to fight
Yeah.
tonight. Like they were all
Yeah. Oh
about
yeah.
it. And here I am like at AFN and I'm like, I play Taylor Swift on the radio. Like, watch out,
Which
guys.
which I love Taylor Swift, so that's important. Keep them coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, you know, he used to always say, like, always improve your foxhole. And I was like,
Mm,
coming in hot with the Taylor Swift. I got you, sir. But no, I've stolen that sense and been like, why we need to leave places better than we found them. We need to leave shops better than we found them. We need to leave airmen better than we found them. You know, we you get a young airman, and I just taught tech school for 3 years, you know, and they're so motivated and they're so excited when they come to tech school, and they're so excited when they leave to go to the field. Where are they
mm.
losing it? What are we doing to them
Yeah.
that's causing them to lose it? That needs to be looked at, because you got to take care of your airmen. Leave your airmen better than they came to you. We shouldn't be poisoning them. We shouldn't be making them into these salty E3s. Like, you should hear some of the things that come out of these A1C's mouths, and I'm like, you've been here like 2 minutes. Like, how are you this salty, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
what are we? How are we acting as senior NCOs, as
That's
NCOs,
there
that's
it is. Yeah.
causing them to be that way?
Yeah, 1,000%. I was talking to a friend of mine last week, and that was a point that he had made, and he was out on the line talking to his airman, and he was just like, he's a senior, and he's like, "You know what? I'm just gonna ask the question." And he's like, what's the deal? You know, guys and gals, is it really you guys just don't respect the people above you? And he said, and he gave this young airman credit. She'd been there about 6 months in A1C, and she's like, can I tell the truth? He's like, "Go for it." And she's like, "Have you seen the stand up? Have you seen the way the staffs and the techs talk to each other? They call each other by first name, inappropriate jokes, all these examples." So for him, that was gut check time too, because, you know, he laid that question out there in a super honest, vulnerable forum. You know, A1C so and so didn't have to say a word, but to point it back, it's like, what have we created at the junior NCO and even our senior NCO level that we're showing these airmen? Like, because you'll say it constantly, oh, that's a new generation and they don't get it. Yes, to a part. However, they're still people, and if you treat them as a person, they're going to treat you as a person.
100%. Respect is a two-way street. And you know, all my favorite chiefs and all my favorite leaders have always shown me so much respect and so much, just, I guess, attention. And the fact that the senior would ask the A1C a question and actually listen to the answer is the biggest thing. I was in an NCO PES, a professional enhancement seminar. You know, those useless 3-day things that you sometimes go to. And I I had asked a question. I'm a young staff sergeant, and there's a panel of NCO, senior NCOs, and I asked this question: why is it that we allow different career fields to have different standards? I.e.,
Mm,
I'm public affairs. If I mess up, no one is going to die, but if somebody on the flight line jacks
yep.
something up, someone could die over it. So why are there different, you know, spanks for different career fields? Why is it that we're not all held to the same standard? And I used the term nonner. I said, as a
Oh no.
nonner, I'm not held to the same standard because nobody dies if I mess up. And when I tell you that these senior NCOs, one of which was in maintenance, was like, oh, we have never heard this term before. And I was like, wait a minute. Like, excuse me? And they were all so hung up on the fact that I used this super derogatory term, nonner, which I thought was common vernacular across the
Mhm.
Air Force, that they did not even pay attention to my question. They would have rather torn down what I
Mm,
said instead of actually addressed the thought behind it. And I've never forgotten that. And I tell that story all the time. Even every other NCO in the class was like, "Oh no, we've never heard that term." And I'm like, "Y'all lying. Y'all are big liars.
1000%.
You've been calling people nonners for the last 8 years. Come on." So the fact that, he listened to the A1C and internalized that feedback, I love that, man. I love it.
Yeah, he's a great dude. So it's broken. How do we change it?
How do we change it, right? I think that, like I said, it starts with having these conversations and having them in a public forum and changing it as much as you can on your molecular level. My dad used to say
Mm,
when I'd get real spun up about something, some institutional wrong that I felt had been placed
right.
upon me, he would say, worry about your small circle of influence. and
Mm,
and what does that mean? You worry about your babies. And I've always
yeah.
called airmen my babies, and I don't think I'll ever stop at this point. I recognize they're grown humans that join the
Mhm.
military, but to me they're like my little baby ducklings, my little baby lambs. I actually have like a statue of a lamb in my office to remind me of the baby lambs. Worry about your small circle of influence. How can you take care of your airmen that day? How can you take care of your mission that day? How can you provide valuable feedback to your supervisor that day? How can
Mm,
you mentor to the left and right of you, right? Because we spend so much time being focused on our airmen and our young senior NCOs that as and our young NCOs that as senior NCOs, we're not looking to the left and right going, Nate, how are you? And
yeah.
genuinely listening. So it starts at our small circle of influence. And then, secondly, we have a SimSAF in the seat with Chief Bass who values this honest feedback and who really wants to make sure our enlisted force is the best and most capable and most prepared that it can be. So I know that there are big things happening at all levels up and down our Air Force. And I think that having these conversations in a public forum are going to influence some of those changes that we can hopefully see and implement very soon.
Yeah, and we talked about it a little bit earlier. Regardless of what a forum looks like and this, that, or whatever, it's going to be us and some of those people above us, of course. That's where the change is going to happen. I mean, you can change whatever you want on a forum. It's how we change, like you said, our own personal bubble of how we treat and value people and capture what we're actually doing.
Yeah, and it also starts with just ourselves. Like, if we all said tomorrow, like, no, we're not going to do this anymore, what is the Air Force going to do? They can't fire all of us. That's the best part about it. I never did push to do anything more with my EPR after the year I had. I took the L, and I'm sure
Yeah,
I'll see it, reflected. And I had a chief tell me, well, I just don't want you to screw yourself out of promotion, a couple of years down the line when this EPR pops up. And it's like, man, if it does, it does. Like, it, I'm not going to change it now. I'm not going to go back and try to hand jam something in there. So you got to take care of yourself. Like I said in the post, sometimes you got to slow down so you can finish the race.
yeah,
You're important to the whole team, and more importantly, the Air Force is not going to be sitting beside you in the retirement home when you're 90 years old. So take care of your family, take care of your spouses. When I'm telling you, like, I want my kids to recognize me at my retirement and not be like, who's this lady that says she's our mom? I mean that. And I'm not trying to be another divorced senior NCO. So it's sometimes you got to put focus on yourself and on your family. Sometimes it needs to be on the mission, but whatever you're doing for yourself that day, it is what needs to get done.
absolutely. And I think, and I know because we've been there, right? Most of us, the good ones, you'll see when the Air Force comes calling, they'll answer because we know we know what we signed up for. And so whether it's short tours, deployments, personally, I've missed the birth of my son. Like, yeah, with I won't go there, but it hurt.
Of
However,
course.
when the time is when it's your time to go do what the Air Force needs you to do, most of us go,
Yes.
you know?
Yes, 100%. And I mean, I watched my son go to his first day of kindergarten on FaceTime, you know? So
Mm,
not in the same vein, but like I feel like we all have those stories. And
yeah.
if we share them, if we share them with our NCOs and we show that, okay, I know this sucks and I'm going to totally validate the feeling that it is unfair and you should not have to be missing the birth of your son. You should not have to be watching your kid go to kindergarten on FaceTime. I know that sucks, but here, let me tell you this story and let me help you get through it, right? Because that's the only thing at the end of the day that is really gonna help our airmen is if we show them that we're human and not tell them just to suck it up and press.
Yeah, and I think it's a crazy thought, but being good people and being good senior NCOs or NCOs to airmen, for those that even want to get out or those that are in, because how often do you go home and they're talking to their buddies or friends and they'll say, "Oh, the Air Force is awesome, XYZ. I have the best people take care of me," or "My whole supervision is shitty. They don't care. I bet they don't even know if I'm on leave right now or when I get back," because I've seen both of that happen.
100%. And how many times do you have the airmen that have those stories of, "Hey, I just want to do my 4 years and get out," and you have an NCO or a senior NCO above them that's like, "Well, don't waste my time then," or why don't you stay and look at all this great stuff that we have. Let's normalize that it's okay that you joined for school. It's okay that you
Mhm.
joined to get out of your nowhere town. It's okay that you only want to do 4 years. You've done more than the other, 98% of the population. Thank you for your service. Go live your life of benefits. Congrats on the free school, bro. Like, we have to normalize that and not make it a stigma on our young airmen. Like, just they all have a story, and we shouldn't have to have a form that tells us to ask the right questions and get to know our airmen. That should be something that comes naturally.
Yeah, 1,000%, because people is where it's at. But I
Mhm.
think I'm glad we're having this conversation, and that's why these conversations are important because we've alluded to it before. Just we have to break the unwritten rules. We have to because most of them know them now. As you make rank, you see them because you get the feedback of, like you said, don't take your foot off the gas. Your education should be at this level by now. You should apply for this position. You should do this school. You should lead this program. So and sometimes you get a great supervisor who tells you those expectations so you know where you're at. Other times, no one says a word. And then you sit down for the first time as a staff sergeant, and someone looks at your records and says, "You haven't done anything." But it shouldn't be a, well, you're an NCO now. You need this, 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 and this. What if? What if people air forced because they liked it?
What a novel idea. Like, what if we worked because we felt value in the mission and we didn't want to let our NCOs down and
Yeah.
we liked the people that we worked for. I and I guess you're never going to like 100% of the people you work for. And so maybe that's a misnomer on me, but at least you have respect for them.
Yeah.
I as a young airman, man, like, I'm telling you, the last thing I wanted to do was disappoint my ops chief because, like, God forbid, if he was disappointed in me, it was like disappointed dad FaceTime. And so, I think that there needs to be a little bit more of that. But it was also because he took the time to know me and he took the time to
Yeah.
respect me as a young airman, listen to my ideas, validate the work that I was doing. I didn't just see him, every other day because he was out doing XYZ around the base and I was like a latchkey kid back in the office. So I do think that showing up is half the battle, I guess. And like, as my supervisor likes to say, hope is a strategy. So we just
Sure.
we worry about that small sphere of influence, and we hope everything else kind of falls in line after that.
Yeah. And I think we can get there. I think I think the right people are at the top right now. Like I said, I'm all in on the accelerate, change or lose, and the initiatives that Chief Bass is doing because she's looking at the right stuff. And let's be real, it's hard to change a culture of an enterprise that's been doing stuff a certain way for so long.
It is. It is 100%. And you're never going to change 100% of the minds either, you know? And I like I said before, I'm not saying that the chiefs that made it the way that the formula says are bad chiefs. A lot of them
No.
aren't trying to you know, further this culture along. A lot of them are just trying to give you the answers to the test, and God bless them for that. They're operating within the culture and the framework that exists. What I think you're saying and what I'm saying is like, what if we just knock out all the framework and kind of see what happens? You know, is everything going to go to hell in a handbasket? I don't know. Like, tune in next week, but at least like let's give it
Yeah.
a shot.
Yeah. No, yeah, 1,000%. Because we can't be afraid to do something different. We just can't. And I think that goes into, the strategic level and the operational level and the tactical level. Because on the tactical level, when you're leading the airmen, you've got and because it's all back to buy-in. We got to change it to make it most look like what we would do when the war drums start pounding. And if you can do that, you're going to get the buy-in from the airmen.
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, I'm 100% there with you, Nate. And that I think it's starting to swing the other way. At least I hope so. Like you said, we've got the right people at the top. We're starting to ask the right questions. Um, there are some amazing chiefs that are all over this Air Force that are doing the right thing and taking care of their airmen and their senior NCOs the right way. And I really appreciate like you doing what you do, like listening to your podcast and hearing all of these different perspectives from all around the force is really motivating. And at the same time, like, man, you just validate like what we all feel. And that was what the post kind of ended up being, the night that it went public and I was up to like maybe 100 shares at like 8 o'clock at night. And I was like, I
Yeah.
told my husband, who's also active duty, who's also a senior NCO, I was like, babe, what do I do? I was like, should I take it down? And he was like, nah, he's like, you'd hate yourself if you took it down. He's like, it's
Yeah.
already out there. Like, let's just see what happens. And then I woke up the next day and it was like 400 shares. And I was like, oh no. And then I was on Airman NCO, senior NCO. And I was like, well, I'm getting fired. Cool. Like, it's been a good run, guys. But I wouldn't take it back because if you speak truth to power, then the only I don't think that there's anything really bad that can come from that.
Yeah. And as I told you before we got on, I've had numerous people hit me up, and we're talking senior NCOs with 19 plus years and brand new senior NCOs that have done very well in our system and have made it in 10 years, which is
Yeah,
incredible and good on
amazing.
them. But they're all feeling this in some type of way, and that was why I reached out to you, because this conversation is too important to just leave it in a post and not dig further on what we need to do.
Yeah, I really appreciate like the you allowing me to like add a little bit of context because I do feel like you can't really capture it in a post. And I mean, there were a lot of things that I probably would have edited or said a different way had I known what was going to happen. But hey, I just really appreciate you allowing me to have this conversation and kind of just air it out because that's really what it. I feel like every time I talk to somebody about this, it ends up like an episode of like senior NCO, like what grinds my gears. Like I just like and
Yeah.
I don't want people to be left with that. I love this job. I love serving. I love being a senior NCO. I love connecting with other senior NCOs like yourself. So there is positivity in this field, in this rank. And if we would just, I think, start talking to each other a little bit more, I think that we would discover that.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. Like, even when I go home, right, and people ask me what I think of the Air Force and everything else like that, my usual response is, I love what the Air Force could be.
Yeah,
And don't get me wrong, like you said, I for the most part, I love my job. I love being a master sergeant. I love what that entails. I love the extra expectations on myself. And I love seeing if I can perform. I love being able to help people if I can. And I love the different positions that I get to be in, travel the world, meet people. Like, it's been an incredible journey, and by no means do I want it to stop anytime soon. But at the same time, now that I've been in and I hold what we do in such high regard, I want it to be better.
yeah, 100%. And I think that's any of us that
Yeah.
I don't think any of us look at, because I'm looking down the barrel of getting out within the next 5 years and retiring, hopefully, God willing, and I don't want to leave this for the next baby lambs that are coming on. I want it to be better for them. I want us to all have a better culture. I want to stop losing active duty members to suicide, veterans to suicide. I want us to all
Yeah.
better ourselves and better the culture and better the force, um as a result of it. So yeah, I'm totally on board with that. I love that. I love what the Air Force could be. I think that just sums it all up.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say thanks again. This has been so much fun. I'd love to have you on again in the future and see what comes of all of this. Maybe we can break down the new EPR form when it comes out.
I would love that.
Um, but yeah, just thank you so much. This has been fantastic.
Absolutely, Nate. Hey, if you ever need anything PA, I'm your girl. Like, you got a friend for life over here. So just hit me up if you ever need anything, and I'd love to come back on, and I appreciate you having me on today. It really means a lot.
Absolutely. Thank you. So
Yeah.
until next time on the next perspective.